Hi, I'm Will with Strategic Retirement Solutions. I'm one of the advisors here on the team, and I appreciate you stopping by today to learn a little bit more about something that I feel very strongly about, right? And that is the importance of the first 5 years into retirement, right? We talk a lot about the retirement red zone. That's the years approaching retirement. But what also needs a lot of attention is the first 5 years as you enter into retirement. Now, why do I say that? That's because sequence of return risk, specifically the risk of a negative sequence of return, is essentially the highest and potentially the most detrimental in those first 5 years after retirement. Right. That first bullet point that you see there, sequence of return risk is a major market drop early in retirement and how that could permanently damage your income. If you've had a conversation with me before, I've probably explained it to you, but sequence of return risk is the example of you taking a 5% distribution from your assets and then taking a 25% hit on your portfolio. That means you're now down 30. Now, just to get back to even in the following year, you would need something like 42% worth of return, right? That's not a position that I want to be in. It's not a position that my clients want to be in. And it's something that can be planned around, right? Again, right? Why does this occur? Because withdrawing during a down market forces you to sell more shares at depressed prices to generate that same amount of income for you to live off of during retirement, right? The math works in reverse in retirement, right? When share prices are down during your accumulation years, oftentimes that is an opportunity to purchase more shares at a depressed price. That works against you during your distribution years. And that's why it's so important to transition from having a portfolio that's built for accumulation to now having a plan that is built for distribution. So that being said, two retirement rules that can potentially fail during volatile markets. A great example of this would be the dot-com bubble through 2008, essentially, right, the lost decade that we saw from 2000 to 2010. That would be the 4% safe distribution rule, right? Saying that you can take 4% from your portfolio every year in perpetuity and your assets will never run out. And then traditional asset allocation or the 60-40 rule, right? These are just things that we're calling into question, right? They're things that we need to essentially observe and compare as to how they may work versus other strategies, right? Other ways to build backstops on our portfolio. One of those ways to build a backstop is having guaranteed income. You see in that bullet point right there. Pension, annuity, Social Security, right? These are guaranteed streams of income that essentially mean that no matter what the rest of the market's doing, you're always going to have that guaranteed stream of income, and you don't have to worry about what the rest of the market's doing, right? This is building those guaranteed streams of income is a great way to keep your discretionary cash flow discretionary, right? Keep the assets in your retirement account really meant to spend on what you want, right? Gives you a lot of security in retirement. Then again, I just want to drive this point home that the decisions that you make during those first 5 years of retirement and really the things that happen to you in those first 5 years of retirement are going to affect potentially 25 years worth of retirement, right? If we're planning for a 25-year retirement, the market fluctuation, the portfolio fluctuation that you see in those first 5 years, if you're taking on too much risk, can be really consequential over the course of a retirement. So if you want to learn more about these topics, if you want to talk about things like that negative sequence of return within the context of your retirement plan, I want you to go to retirementprotected.com, watch our free educational webinar where you can dive deeper on topics just like this and many more, and have the opportunity to learn about what are the type of things that you should be looking out for as you make this transition from accumulation to distribution. Once again, that's retirementprotected.com.